future doesn't have to be like that. If you step on in to the secret kindergarten, showing you that your young children hold the key to understanding the universe, understanding the self, and therefore they hold the key to human freedom. Your child is the gatekeeper.
Secret Kindergarten's the second half hour.
Kindergarten is going to show you how.
We do for grown-ups, because I want to share some of my knowledge and I want to share some of where I'm coming from with what I'm doing for the show for kids. And we are going to talk about the visualization training exercise that I just briefly did towards the bottom of the hour, where you ask the child to imagine a TV screen and then to use his imagination to turn on a channel and to picture in his mind what is happening. So that's working on the imagination, and I want to talk to you about where I got that from. That's from a book by Dr. Charles Schaefer called, oh my God, what is it called? Become Somebody. Oh. Let's bring this up. Let's bring up the exact title here for you. Becoming Somebody. Creative Activities for Preschool Children. Now let me tell you about Dr. Charles Schaefer. Rest in peace. He passed away in 2020. Fairleigh Dickinson University Professor of Psychology, Charles Schaefer was a world-renowned psychologist who has appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show, The Today Show, and Good Morning America, and has been widely quoted and featured in other prominent media. He is the author of more than 50 books, including Ages and Stages, A Parent's Guide to Normal Childhood Development, How to Talk to Your Kids About Really Important Things, Toilet Training Without Tears, How to Talk to Your Teens About Really Important Things, How to Help Children with Common Problems, and so on and so forth. He wrote a lot of books. He is the godfather, I think that's what they call him, the godfather of play therapy. So he's written a lot of books about play therapy. Schaefer is a co-founder and director emeritus of the International Association for Play Therapy in Fresno, California, and founder and co-director of the Play Therapy Training Institute in Hightstown, New Jersey. He also was a consulting editor of the International Journal of Play Therapy, and so on and so forth. Schaefer added that his interest in positive psychology was sparked by college philosophy courses he took on wisdom and the meaning of life, his doctoral dissertation on the identification of creative talent in adolescence, and a lifelong appreciation of laughter, play, and humor. For those interested in learning more about positive psychology, Schaefer recommends Flourishing Positive Psychology in the Life Well Lived, edited by Corey L.M. Keyes and Jonathan Haidt, and Positive Psychology in Practice, edited by P. Alex Lindley and Stephen Joseph. And that is what it's all about, to get that development right in the kids out there. Positive psychology. So, just to show in transparency, the visualization training exercise verbatim from Dr. Charles Schaefer's book, it goes a little something like this. The goal of this exercise is to develop your child's imagination or ability to visualize objects not present to the senses. During a quiet time each morning, darken the room and ask your child to put his head in his arms and close his eyes. Then ask him to imagine a TV screen and then, in his imagination, to turn on a channel and picture in his mind what is happening. Ask him to describe what he sees. Some children may not see anything at first, since TV watching may have diminished their imaginative capacity. And that's a true story there. Variations. Ask your child to close his eyes and to picture this scene. He's in the family car, which is going down a road in the country. He is looking out the car window and at the trees and the meadows. Suddenly he sees, and he can't quite believe his eyes, a huge white horse galloping down the road right towards him. As it goes past the car window, he can see very clearly that it is dragging behind it a funny-looking ... And then, you ask the child, your child, our child, what that horse is dragging. And try presenting other scenes for your child to picture in his mind's eye. You might also ask him to draw some of the scenes he has pictured. Another option, ask your child to picture in his mind his scariest dream or his happiest dream, and to describe that dream. And another idea is to ask your child to close his eyes and picture the absurd image you suggest. For example, a horse dancing on the head of a pin, an elephant floating by on a pink cloud. You might also ask your child to suggest a fantastic image for you to picture. And that's where the real magic is, everybody. And in the chapter of the book that activity comes from, that activity is categorized as developing, thinking, imagining, and problem solving. Okay, and some of his pedagogy to back up these activities. Let's read some of that. Piaget, which is one of the main pedagogues that people that talk about child development refer to. Piaget notes that the beliefs of young children have many parallels with the philosophies of primitive people. Primitive man also believes in mystical powers, and he tries to obtain an intuitive understanding of the world and its natural events by creating myths, symbols, and legends. Piaget states that the intuitive or preparational thinking of the child ages 2 to 6 represents an intermediate stage between highly egocentric thinking and rational thought. This type of thinking is rich in vivid, concrete images and symbols, and it appears to function as an intermediate way station between irrational, dreamlike thinking of a very young child and the rational, realistic thinking of the adult. Intuitive thinking has also been termed preconscious thinking by Kuby, metaphoric thinking by Bruner, and daemonic thinking by May. It is the realm of magic and supernatural forces, as well as wild things and taboo topics such as death, sexual impulses, cannibalistic drives, etc. Properly channeled and integrated, it is also the basic wellspring of creative expression. When repressed or walled off, the preconscious daemonic drives can lead to apathy and psychopathology. Alright, so this is concerning developing the prefrontal cortex of the brain that young children do have, but it's not really fully developed. And this is concerning these activities that I focus on in the Secret Kindergarten. Is what motivated me to do it in the first place from when I was teaching, is this magical realm of the young child and the symbols and the dream sequences that bubble up. And I firmly believe that the things that the young children come up with when you're engaged with them in activities in the interests of their development, coming from a place of a good heart, you receive messages and signs and symbols that are synchronicities, that are serendipities, that are messages from elsewhere to you as a kind of thank you. Crazy as it sounds, but it's why I do this whole thing, because that's what happened to me. Alright, So, prefrontal cortex concerns things like focusing your attention on things, predicting the consequences of your actions, anticipating events in the environment, controlling impulses, managing emotional reactions, planning for the future. That's very important. Planning for the future. It's all about the goal setting. You can check out my other show, Otherworld Connections, on Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, which always end up leading towards goal setting and planning for the future, because that is super important. That is the key of being a human being. Coordinating and adjusting complex behaviors. For example, I can't do A until B happens. And the prefrontal cortex is concerned with voluntary imagination, which in this exercise you are encouraging your young child to work on. Visualization training. You are, by asking them to picture something that you suggest, that is trying to get them to work on voluntary imagination. And if you can do that in a fun way and back and forth, let them have a turn to get you to do it, well, yeah, you are developing that prefrontal cortex. You are doing a better job than all the the teachers in the daycares out there. Shout out to all the preschool teachers that are really good. Okay, so yeah, voluntary imagination, and then what you are getting is why I keep going on about this activity is involuntary imagination. Signs and symbols and things that come up out of where? Well, they are plucked out of somewhere in the universe and they're bubbling up and they're magic. And let's just quickly go to Evolve Your Brain, an excerpt from Evolve Your Brain by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Here we go. Let's think about this. Damage to the frontal lobe causes human beings to have one or more of the following symptoms. Are you ready? We tend to become lazy, lethargic, and uninspired. We desire sameness or routine. We have difficulty focusing on single-minded tasks. We start projects or endeavors, such as diet or exercise routines, and never follow through. We fail to gain meaning out of situations. In other words, we hardly ever learn anything new from situations so that we can modify our actions to produce a different outcome. We seem to have emotional outbursts when our routine world is disrupted. We do not project into the future by making any plans. Does this sound like anyone we may know? Yeah, it sounds a lot like me. I'm so sorry to me. And, you know, the television really has a big part to play in these effects of our development. It's really sad. We are dehumanized by our TV upbringing. Oh, so depressing. Damage to the frontal lobe never seems to inhibit or alter the basic functions of sensory, motor, memory, or emotional systems that are carried throughout the rest of the brain. Instead, when the frontal lobe is injured, it seems to lose its ability to lead, synthesize, and coordinate all other brain regions that affect so much of who we are. The biggest reason people cannot utilize the frontal lobe is because we are addicted to our emotions and feelings from the body. In a very real sense, we have self-lobotomized our own brains by relying solely on the hardwired, oft-repeated and oft-fired neural networks that require little or no thought to initialize. When Henry David Thoreau spoke of people living lives of quiet desperation, he very well could have been speaking of our inactive and underutilized frontal lobe. Recent studies in the brain scan technology have shown that the less activity in the frontal lobe, the greater the tendency toward impulsively over-emotional behavior. In fact, recent research done by Richard Davidson, PhD at the University of Wisconsin, subjects who demonstrated heightened frontal lobe activity on functional brain scans had lower levels of the stress hormone cortisol, So the greater the brain activity in the frontal lobe, the more ability we have to willfully control our reactions and our impulsive behaviors. That's where the magic is. That's where the magic happens. We need to bring that frontal lobe back, and we need to get that frontal lobe right for all the kids out there to change the world. The frontal lobe, when fully activated, gives us the capability to be much more in control of who we want to become than we probably realize. To break free of our emotional addictions, we must put the king back on the throne. To be controlled by the impulses of the body is to live with the body as the mind. When we live in survival mode, these powerful age-old chemicals influence the rest of our thinking brain to put all our awareness on our environment, our body and time. In a sense, then, we must move our mind out of our body and put it back in the brain. To do so, we first have to gain an understanding of what the frontal lobe does for us and how our evolution has blessed us with this marvel of supervision, control, and high-level thinking. And we can do emotional freedom tapping, which you can hear about from Jay Parker, who's coming up in just over an hour on Studio B. He has a lot of good information about emotional freedom technique, the tapping, and that can get us back on track. And we can also we can just say, hey, listen, body, I'm in control of my mind. Okay, so shut up, body. My mind does the thinking for me, thank you. So anyway, the voluntary imagination, this prefrontal cortex stuff, frontal lobe stuff, is undeveloped or underdeveloped in the young child. So where do the ideas that the young child comes up with come from? Well, I say that it is their involuntary imagination, much like what happens in dreams. Yeah, things just come into your mind. And I say that young children are a gateway to the Jungian, if we just put it in Carl Jung's terms, the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of archetypes and universal symbols. And the whole point of doing activities like this with young children, spending time and attention on these kind of things in the interest of making your child's life better and making the world a better place, you get to tap into the reservoir of archetypes and universal symbols and basically develop your spiritual life and get guidance and information on where you are to go in your life. So it's a win-win for everybody. Okay, I have 4 minutes, so I can try and talk about some Rudolf Steiner. The child's changing consciousness as the basis of pedagogical practice. Okay, let's just read a little bit of this before we get to the end of the show for some more context on the spiritual science side, or the anthroposophical. It could be said that until the change of teeth, the child is fundamentally an imitative being, but the kind of inner experience that pulses through the child's imitation as its very lifeblood. And here I must ask you not to misunderstand what I am going to say, for sometimes one has to resort to unfamiliar modes of expression to characterize something that has become alien to our culture. This is religion in a physical, bodily guise. Until the change of teeth, the child lives in a kind of bodily religion. We must never underestimate the delicate influences that only through a child's powers of perception emanate from the environment, summoning an urge to imitate. We must in no way underestimate this most fundamental and important aspect of the child's early years. Later on, we will see the tremendous significance this has for both the principles and practical methods of education. When contemporary natural science examines such matters, the methods used appear very crude, to say the least. To illustrate what I mean, I would like to tell you the case of the mathematician horses that, for a while, caused a sensation in Germany. I have not seen these Dusseldorf horses myself, but I was in a position to carefully observe the horse belonging to Herr van Osten of Berlin, who played such a prominent part in this affair. It was truly amazing to witness how adept his horse was at simple mathematical calculations. The whole thing caused a great sensation, and an extensive treatise dealing with this phenomenon was quickly published by a university lecturer, who came to the following conclusion. This horse possesses such an unusually fine sensibility that it can perceive the slightest facial expressions of its master, Herr von Osten, as he stands next to it. These facial expressions are so fine that even a human being could not detect them. And when Herr von Osten gives his horse an arithmetical task, he naturally knows the answer in his head. He communicates this answer to the horse with very subtle facial expressions that the horse can perceive. In this way, we can stamp the answers on the ground. If, however, one's thinking is even more accurate than that of contemporary mathematical sciences, one might ask this lecturer how he could prove his theory. It would be impossible for him to do so. My own observations led me to a different conclusion. I noticed that in his grey-brown coat, Herr von Osten had large bulging pockets, of which he took sugar lumps and small sweets that he shoved into the horse's mouth during his demonstrations. This ensured an especially close and intimate relationship, a physically based affinity between steed and master. And due to this intimate physical relationship, this deep-seated attachment which was constantly being renewed, a very close soul communication between a man and a horse came about. And that's the whole point of the secret kindergarten, to get adults to get this soul communication and this deep-seated attachment to young children, because all you people out there that might be listening on Revolution.radio, you know what's going on in the world, and we want to transfer that to the young kids to create that freedom future that we're trying to create and that we're looking for. So that's what it's all about. So we just got to try to get our kids away a little bit more from the TV and get that connecting going on, and then we get our tapping into the collective unconscious. And that's it. Okay, so thanks so much for tuning in. I think that's the end of the show. Take care. Bye.